Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. Having a quick snack at breakfast, we sat at the kitchen table before going to our jobs. Patty was checking her makeup, and I was trying to finish my coffee and finish off the sports section in the newspaper before I hit the road. He wiped his upper lip with a napkin and stared at his wife. What the hell kind of question is that? I demanded an answer. I learned a long time ago that the best defense is a good offense. 20 years ago, I was very proud of this little guy, but every time he seemed less impressive to me. You know, we ladies sit at the club on Wednesdays and have a couple of drinks after playing golf. I almost fell off my chair. I've heard that a group of women can be rougher than a bunch of guys. I also knew they were more honest. Men expect other men to lie. We do it all and take it for granted. It makes us feel better about ourselves and our place in the universe. When a guy talks about his 8 inches, it's implied that he has about 6 inches. It's a collective, ego-boosting and self-confidence-boosting agreement that we all agree to. It's not written down anywhere, but we all know this rule. At some point we reach an age when we deploy this principle and tell other guys how small it is. If we call it a small 4-inch cigarette butt, then the other guys again think it's about 6 inches. It's a language that all men understand, and it's been working since Adam's time. The only exception is the occasional freaking freak who actually has 8 inches or more. These guys are feared and hated by everyone else. Anyway, everyone knows that when he talks about his 8 inches, it's really 8 inches. This is a real breakthrough for everyone. These guys are not accepted and shunned, at least by other guys. And they just enjoy it. I had a dilemma. Should I tell the real truth or the truth as we guys understand it? For some reason, it seemed better to make a big mistake. It was an instinctive decision that I think most men would have made. I've never measured it, I lied. Hell, since I turned 14, I've been measuring my dog every day. If I could guess, I'd say about 8 inches. You'll respect my privacy, won't you? It suddenly occurred to me that this was not what I wanted to advertise in their club. What do you think, Matt? Patty laughed. But that fantasy died when I was 18 and I saw Sam, Big Salami, Reynolds in the shower after our first senior baseball practice. I always laughed at his nickname. It was a good joke on the guy, or so I just thought. When he got out of the shower and headed to his locker, the other guys casually moved their towels so as to make sure that their weapon was not on public display. No one wanted to be compared to Sam. It has become a strange ritual. After training and games, Sam always strolled around the locker room. The others behaved like smaller bulls, always retreating and obeying him. He was a rooster on a walk when he was naked. Caesar's Caesarean. Instinctively, we gave in to the impression that we thought he was the best guy when he was naked. Dressed, he was no longer anything special. He didn't even play very well. I think that's why he flaunted his only gift whenever he could. It's a good thing Patty only asked about the length, I thought as I drove to work a little later. Even more surprising than the length of Sam's salami was its thickness. The handle of my Louisville bat wasn't that thick, and it was carved out of a damn ash tree. Sam took that fantasy away from us, and we secretly hated him for it. Everyone was only too happy when he moved to New Mexico. Sitting at my desk, I started to remember something about last night. Patty was quite aggressive when she returned home after dark. She insisted that we go to bed early. She even made our 2 teenagers go to bed too, so that they wouldn't hear any unusual sounds from our bedroom. Why can't women just accept us as men with feelings and needs, and not treat us like cattle? The week went well enough, and making love was pretty good, but I kept the lights off most of the time. However, this did not discourage her at all. I knew that it would be very difficult to beat her at her own game. The next Thursday morning I was sitting and reading the newspaper. Patty came home yesterday, burning with desire. I saw it in her eyes when she put the clubs in the closet and turned to me. The children noticed it too and went to bed without question. Their women's golf league was only halfway through the end of the season, and I had serious doubts about whether I would live to see that end. If the intensity of our lovemaking continues to grow exponentially, then I will be gone by the end of August. Jesus Christ. I shot back. Do you think you pulled it out a few inches last night? Was that your goal? Matt, it's like cooking a pig's snout. The more you cook it, the tougher it gets, Patty grinned. Where the hell did she get that expression from? I'll measure it today and let you know, okay? I objected. Last night, after playing golf, all the wives said that their husband claims that he has 8 inches. That is, everyone except Sandy. She claimed that her husband had 9 inches, and she measured it herself, Patty confessed. Sandy challenged us to really measure our husbands. She claimed that it was unlikely that anyone would have about 7, i.e. 2 inches less than her husband, she giggled. I couldn't believe my ears. These fools need our lives. My mind was frantically searching for a solution. Patty, you can hurt a man's ego by doing this. Some guys may have exaggerated a little, and the truth can leave an emotional scar in their soul. Why don't you forget about everything or just get sick next week? I suggested. It's not just about the men, you know. The girls and I are in this together. I have pride too. I want us to be well represented in this case. I can't believe we're having this conversation. I whined. Why make some kind of competition out of it? That Sandy Reynolds is so smug. The other women, and I want to take her down. Did you say Reynolds, Patty? I didn't know there was a Reynolds in your league. They moved to the village by the river a couple of months ago, his wife replied. Sandy said Sam went to high school here before he moved to New Mexico. Why wasn't I surprised? That bastard was like a nightmare. Like that damn Freddy Krueger. You think you killed him, but the bastard survives in the sequel, spreading fear among the normal population. I bent down and put my head in my hands. Less than an hour later, I got to the office. The door was locked and the stapler was tied to a rope. I left work a little early. I told the secretary that I wasn't feeling well. Besides, I was afraid that the rope would constrict my blood circulation under the fucking head and it would fall into Patty's hand during the measurement. I was watching the news that night, and then I said I wanted to watch the Jay Leno show, but Patty didn't want that. She demanded that I join her in the bedroom. I reluctantly followed her and took off my clothes. Almost in the blink of an eye, I was in my pajamas. What are you doing, Matt? Patty asked. I didn't even know you had pajamas. I don't think you've ever worn it since we got married. I'll think I should start, I replied. You never know when the kids might catch us. Matt, they came to us quite often. When they got older and looked at your ass a few times, they stopped. This has not happened for many years. I found a ruler in your toolbox, Patty continued. Get this bad guy out and see how he handles it. It has to be tough. I'll measure it from the base, where it attaches to your body. This is what we all agreed on yesterday. I don't think he's going to get up, Patty. He's a shy little boy, and the thought of being measured might get in his way, I suggested. Patty had very different thoughts when she brought it to her mouth, then stopped and looked at me. He seems to be blushing more than usual, Matt. The head also seems swollen. What did you do to him? Patty asked. Nothing. I lied. You damn near beat him up last night. That is all. Maybe we should wait. Give him time to recover. I should have known that the vacuum cleaner was too powerful and that it would cause my organ to turn abnormally red. Damn it. That thought was even worse than a stapler on a rope. I had only one chance left. Don't be such a child, Matt, Patty cooed. She started playing it like a beautiful instrument. I wanted him to resist, to stay asleep. I stood and thought about the impossible victory of the Red Sox in the series. Patty cheated him until he stood up and they exchanged smiles. Many times he made me jealous of her attention. She held it in her hand and put a tape measure to my stomach, where it was attached. At least you can apply it more tightly, I complained, pressing the end of the ruler 1/4 of an inch into my flesh. 8 1/4 inches, Patty announced. What a relief. I survived. Okay, you have the data. I'll take this tape measure to make sure it ends up in my toolbox, I offered, reaching for the device. Wait a minute, Patty exclaimed. The end was cut off. This thing is no good. How long have you been using it like this? Really? God, I didn't even notice it. I lied again. I'll buy a new one tomorrow. Don't worry, kid, Patty replied. I have a yardstick. We'll use it, even if it's too much. She left the room, and I tried to come up with some solution. But I couldn't, and soon she returned with her measure. 6 1/4 inches, she announced. It seemed to me that there was less enthusiasm in her voice than in the previous, inaccurate statement. I looked at Patty, wondering what she was thinking. Wait a minute. Did she just say 1/4 of an inch? The best value I've ever gotten after measuring is exactly 6 inches. Maybe he's growing up after all. As long as our big boy is up and ready to play, chuckled Patty. Why was I so worried? When Patty was in a romantic mood, I always felt like the king of the world. She influenced my emotions so much. If she seemed so happy with me, then I was completely satisfied. The week went well for me, despite my concerns about the big salami and his wife's bragging. Patty started talking about my big, fat cock and how much she loves it. I wonder how many women suddenly become more joyful when they approach 40? It was women's golf night, and I was sitting in horror, waiting for Patty to come home. She arrived a little later than usual and a little more drunk. Seeing her look, the children went back to their rooms. I've never understood before how a woman can look delighted only with her face and especially with her eyes. She giggled as she led me into the bedroom. I think she was already naked before I closed the door. She helped me undress. Where did this come from? It happened again when my dear wife lavished her attention on my admiring organ. Grinning and wiping her chin, Patty began to tell me how the measurements went. It turned out that Bob Mason was the biggest loser, 5.5 inches. 3 of them had exactly 6. My baby was next. Someone had half an inch more than 6, and another had 6 and 9/16. Damn it. How can you measure it so accurately? Did his wife use a caliper or something? What would be the best answer to this question? My thoughts were racing. I'm not an expert on this, Patty. Is it really that important? I asked. It seems that we are doing a great job with the equipment we have. I'm just curious. Sandy was so proud that she won the comparison. It bothered me. She even said we could try the big salami, as she called it. Great. Now some dumb fool is offering the ladies from the Women's League the services of a big salami. If even one wife tries the forbidden fruit, everything will be lost. These fools tell each other everything. I wonder how many people are discussing this jerk at this very moment? Bingo! I almost shouted. Just imagine that you have a big salami yourself, Matt. What would you do with her? Would you treat me differently? Patty insisted. I climbed back up and slapped her in the face with my imaginary monster. Oh yes, I really worship this 9-inch monster. Patty joined in my game, once again waking up my sleeping beauty. I moved away from Patty's head. She really got into this. I knew she craved it, but we well-endowed men always make women beg, don't we? Please, Patty pleaded. I really need it right now. I slowly ran my head around her hole, applying pressure. Damn, you're so tight, I moaned. Get ready to fill, I ventured. I hoped I wasn't wrong to say that. He's so big, Patty moaned. Make me your girl right now and put me in my place. Well, that really turned me on. I pushed slowly until the head squeezed through. Because I was moving so slowly, Patty seemed very tense. She moaned, and I stood motionless and waited for her to start squirming, as I expected. Soon she moved her hips, trying to squeeze me deeper. I lifted her legs and put them on my shoulders. She smiled, thinking that I was giving her what she wanted. Her surprise was obvious when she looked at me. I'm in control, you little slut, I growled as best I could. I want it so bad, Patty whimpered. I'll be a good little cheater. I began to slowly crawl further and further into the surprisingly cramped space. We reached the finish line together. For a long time we just lay there, sweating. Eventually, my breathing and heartbeat returned to something close to normal. I looked at Patty. She was smiling in her sleep, throwing an arm and a leg over me. I felt a deep and passionate love for her when I stroked her cheek. She was my girlfriend. The next day at work, I got 2 calls from the husbands of the women who played golf with Patty. Both said essentially the same thing. We should have soaked the big salami. I tried to explain that he would return in the sequel and be even more vindictive with his fucking joystick. They probably never watched the Elm Street movies because they didn't understand what I was talking about. In the end, I told them that I didn't know any reliable hitmen, and they were left on their own. Patty couldn't get enough of love all week. She was constantly coming up with scenarios and waiting for me to play along with her. I was a plumber, and she had to let me use her by leaning over the kitchen sink before I fixed the drain. I was a traveling salesman who gave her a lot of encyclopedias if she could swallow all my 9 inches. I was the policeman she had to convince not to fine her for speeding. Each of these imaginary guys had a huge dick that she was forced to please. One evening, we went out to dinner. When we left the restaurant, I opened the door for her and helped her in. I walked around the car and got behind the wheel. James. I saw. Who the hell is James? I played smart. I couldn't help but notice it when you got in the car, I confessed. If my husband found out that you were looking at his pride and joy, you would be fired immediately. She was brawling. We can find a chauffeur who will behave himself. Oh my God. Patty gasped. You're fired. Then I don't have to follow your orders, do I? I asked. Then you'll change your mind about firing me. Am I still fired? I asked. Take me home, please, and I'll think about leaving you. As the days passed, I realized that somehow the big salami had worked in my favor. Then everything went downhill decisively. One evening I came home from work and found a message on my answering machine. Patty stayed late at work and asked me to feed the kids. The next evening, I received a message about a shopping trip to the mall. I was bored, so after feeding the kids, I decided to go to this mall and surprise Patty. I drove around the parking lot looking for her car. I didn't want to park right in front of her. It would be easier to find her if I knew which door she came through. I found her car parked near the entrance to the food court. I found a parking spot about 4 rows away from her. When I got out of the car, I saw Patty and some guy walking towards her car. Their hands were full of packages, so I couldn't see the man enough to identify him. They put the bags in her trunk, and when he straightened up, I almost peed in my pants. It's been over 20 years, but I'll never forget Sam's big fucking salami. They got into Patty's car together and drove away. I barely put the keys in the ignition. I was so upset. I joined the traffic about 4 cars behind her and followed her. She obviously didn't know that I was stalking her because she was staying at a small but nice local hotel. This was the hotel where we had our wedding reception. It was a long time ago. Patty and Sam laughed as they took the bags out of her trunk and carried them into the hotel. I struggled to understand what I was witnessing. Why on earth would she go to a hotel with this freak of nature? What is the reason, other than the obvious one? I wanted to go in and peek, but I had to be careful. I wanted to know what was going on before making hasty decisions. I was sitting in the parking lot waiting for them to get back to the car. An hour and a half later, they finally returned. I was wondering if I should follow them or try to find out everything I could at the hotel. I decided that if they were doing something wrong, it was too late to stop them, so I went into the small lobby. A pretty young girl was sitting at the table. Miss, I'm sorry to bother you. I apologized. My wife told me to meet her here, and I'm afraid I'm a little late. Her name is Patty Jarrow. Could you tell me if she rented a room here? The girl was typing on the keyboard and looked at the monitor. Mrs. Jarrow has booked room 302 for tomorrow night, the girl said. That's all I could find. I thanked her and left. My mind refused to accept the information I received. I knew there had to be some explanation for this. It was almost 10 o'clock when I got home. Where have you been, darling? Patty asked. I was already getting worried. I needed golf shoes, so I want to see if I could find them. I didn't see anything that I liked, I added. How was your day? Well, I'm sure you'll find something, Patty told me. I just went shopping after work. Nothing interesting. By the way, Steve called and asked you to call him back. Steve was my golf partner and probably my best friend. I dialed his number. Matt, what do you say we go out for a couple beers tomorrow night? He asked. Larry Schenk will be in town, and he suggested that we meet. Larry was a friend who had recently been transferred to another state by his company. I hung up the phone and turned to my wife. Patty, I whispered. Steve wants me to have a beer with him and Larry Schenk tomorrow night. Do you have any plans? No, go ahead. Have a good time, she smiled. I've arranged with Steve to pick me up at 7 in the evening. Maybe I'm setting him up, I thought to myself. He'll understand when I tell him why. That night Patty wanted to make love to me, but I didn't have the heart. I told her that my stomach was upset, and it wasn't a lie. Ever since I saw Patty with Sam, he's been in a complete mess. I didn't sleep well that night. The next day was Saturday, and I was hanging around the house, keeping an eye on Patty. The children went to stay with friends for the whole day. At some point, I caught her off guard. She was talking very quietly on the phone in the kitchen. When I entered the room, she quickly said goodbye to the other person and hung up the phone. About 5 o'clock, Patty came into the garage where I was trying to fix the lawnmower. She had the car keys in her hand. Since you have plans for the evening, I think I'll visit Jen. I haven't seen her in weeks, Patty said. Jen was Patty's younger sister and lived about an hour away from us. It sounded reasonable, if only it were true. Patty? Is something wrong? Is there anything you want to tell me? I asked. I thought she would be able to confess, and we would try to sort it out. It's okay, Matt. She answered quickly. She didn't ask why I thought something was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, got into the car, and drove away. I decided that I wasn't going to catch Patty in a lie for weeks and follow her around. If she ends up in that hotel room tonight, then it's all over. The thought saddened me, but I had no choice. I'm not going to be a willing cuckold. I waited for half an hour. This will give them time to warm up, so they'll have company. I got to the hotel and was absolutely sure that Patty's car was already there. I parked next to her and slammed the door and headed into the lobby. I'm Matt Jarrow, and I need the key to room 302, I insisted. The girl must have realized that I was serious. She just bent down, took the key, and handed it to me. By this time, my blood was already boiling. I was thinking about what I'd say to my cheating wife and her damn salami. On my way to the elevator, I almost bumped into a couple. I just walked around them and got into the elevator when the door was already closing. I thought I heard a voice asking if it was Matt. Without thinking about it anymore, I went to room 302 and put the key in the lock. I pushed open the door and saw Patty. She was wearing a small black thong, and in her hand she was holding a black frilly bra. That was all she was wearing. I was furious. My heart was pounding and my knees were shaking. I've never been so upset in my life. Matt, Patty gasped. What are you doing here? I slammed the door and stepped into the room. I had to think hard to at least formulate an answer. I was furious. It must have been noticeable, because Patty was worried. Matt, is something wrong? You look upset, she said demurely. Where the hell is he? I demanded an answer. In the bathroom? What are you talking about, Matt? Or who are you talking about? Patty asked with trembling lips. You weren't satisfied with me. I hope it's worth it, I growled. I would give my life for you. No one has ever loved his wife more than I loved you, but that wasn't enough for you. Well, have a happy life. I won't be in it. I didn't want to physically hurt Patty, and Sam obviously wasn't there. I decided to leave before anger got the better of me, or before I started crying like a baby. I've never felt such pain in my life. Life without Patty has never been an acceptable option, and I seriously wondered if I could live without her, or if I wanted to. I yanked open the door and practically ran out into the hallway. I will never forget the scene when I entered the elevator. Patty was standing in the hallway, naked to the waist, wearing only a thong, begging me to come back. I stormed through the lobby in such a gloomy mood as I had never had before. I heard my name called again, but I didn't even turn around to see who it was. I got in the car and drove away. I had no idea where to go. I've never felt so alone in my life. Half an hour later, I was sitting with a beer in a small bar. I wanted to get drunk, but I knew it was a bad idea. My mind was in turmoil, and I certainly would have done something really stupid if I had drunk too much. After a while, an attractive blonde, a few years younger than me, sat down next to me. I glanced in her direction, and she smiled. One thing was clear to me. I didn't want to mess with women anymore. She kept trying to engage me in conversation. I came very close to rudely rebuffing her, responding in monosyllables and, for the most part, with nods. Her cell phone rang, and she had a short conversation. I decided to go home and pack my things, and then I'll go find some motel. I felt a little better when I had at least some kind of plan. When I stood up, the girl next to me seemed worried. Please don't leave, she asked. It's in your best interest to stay here for a while. Will you have a drink with me if I buy you one? What is it? She asked. I don't mean to be rude, lady, but I'm not looking for any company. Quite the opposite, I explained. You're an attractive girl. There are a lot of guys around. I'm sorry, but I have to go. Please stay, Matt. I promised I'd keep you here for a few minutes, she pleaded. I turned to get a better look at the woman next to me. Did I know her? Have we met somewhere? What is she talking about? You have an advantage over me, I replied. You seem to know me, but I don't know you, and you're not the kind of woman a man forgets easily. She looked at me, and I thought she was going to cry when she said to me, "You still have charm, even with a broken heart? Is it really that obvious?" I asked. Or has someone already put a corresponding sign on my back? Maybe to hide the puncture wound between the shoulder blades? Thanks for your concern, but I have to go. I definitely didn't need to indulge in sadness and all that with some strange woman in a bar. I've been humiliated enough as it is. I turned to leave. Then Patty came through the door and Big Salami. They came right up to me. I was mad as hell again. I thought I had gained some control, but seeing them together, it all came back. Were they looking for me to humiliate me? They were in for a surprise, if that was their goal. I knew it was better to lose a bar fight and go to jail than to put up with any shit from them. Patty was wearing a black evening dress and looked gorgeous. My heart really hurt when I looked at her. I decided to take the long way and started walking around her to get away. "Matt, listen to me. I do not know what happened, but you are making a big mistake," she exclaimed, grabbing my hand. I bent down and took her hand away. "Of course, it's obvious. I made a mistake when I fell in love with you many years ago. I was wrong when I thought you were shopping at the mall last night instead of spending time at the hotel with that asshole." I growled. "I made a mistake when I went to the room you booked, but I forgot to mention it. But my real mistake was that I didn't wait for that bastard to show up to kick his ass. Maybe I'll fix this mistake right now." "Oh shit," Patty gasped. "Did you know that I was at the hotel with Sam last night and thought I was waiting for him there tonight?" "You thought Sam and I had it? Was there an affair?" Patty shook her head in horror and disbelief. I felt uncomfortable standing in public in front of my wife and her lover. I had had enough, and I wanted to get away from Patty and Sam. I turned to leave when the blonde who had been talking to me earlier stood in front of me. "Matt, I'm Sam's wife, Sandy. Listen to Patty. This is a simple misunderstanding. Sam is not Patty's lover. I promise you," she assured me. Doubt was beginning to creep into my mind. I didn't know if I should feel good because Patty might not have cheated, or really bad because I might have been a real ass. My fading resolve must have shown on my face. Patty came up to me and took my arm. "Sandy, Sam, please excuse us for a few minutes. I have to explain to this big jerk what's going on," Patty said, leading me to a dark booth. She pushed me inside and slid in after me. I was emotionally beaten and prostrated. "Matt, I've never cheated on you, and I never will. I love you without any reservations. Sam and Sandy helped me surprise you for your birthday. We bought some things at the mall to decorate the ballroom, and they helped me hang everything up. That's why I lied to you." "It was wrong," Patty admitted. "I understand that now, but I didn't lie because I wanted to have an affair or hurt you. I never thought it would come out until we surprised you with a surprise tonight, and then you would understand everything. I just sat and listened and dreamed of crawling under the table and dying. I rented a hotel room so that we could spend a pleasant romantic evening after the party. I was just changing when you came in. I didn't want to leave the house already dressed and arouse your suspicions. Steve was going to bring you to the hotel around 8 o'clock at night, and we were going to surprise you with a party at the same hotel where our reception was when we got married." I felt small and ashamed. I struggled to find the words to explain the pain and fear I went through. How can I look everyone in the face? What will they think of me? Women do not marry a man and do not leave him. You are my husband. I don't care about his size, Matt. I'm glad he's so big, and I like the way he feels in me, but it's just because of you. A woman needs an intelligent, kind, loving, supportive, and hardworking man. Patty, I made a big mistake. I didn't have enough faith in you. I let you down and made a complete ass of myself. I do not know what to say or do. I feel like I'm climbing into some kind of hole. I confessed. Are you kidding? Matt, I'm proud of you. You caught me in a lie and did something about it. You're letting me and the whole world know that I'm yours, and you don't want to share me with anyone. Patty protested. For a second, I thought you were going to hit Sam, and now I know better than to lie to you, Matt. When you left in such a rage, I knew you'd probably try to drink and cool off, so I asked Sam, Sandy, and a few other people to drive around looking for your car. We've been checking parking lots all over the city, Patty explained. Sandy found your car and called me. Then she called everyone else and told them that you had been found. Sam was just nearby and drove up here at the same time as me. If I had known that you thought he was my lover, I would never have let him come in here. I've never seen you so upset. You must love me very much, don't you? I didn't want anyone to see my tears, so I hugged Patty tightly and buried my head in her hair. I've made a big fool of myself, but I found out how much her love and loyalty mean to me. Later, at my party, I had to joke a lot. Several, and even more, wise toasts were addressed to me personally. I continued to smile and hug my wife. I felt a little awkward around Patty's parents. I wonder if they think their daughter married a jerk? Patty's dad took me aside in the middle of the party. Son, she's my daughter, but she's your wife. You did the right thing today. She knew that you would do anything for her. Heck, yes, she has known this for many years. Now she knows that you won't tolerate any nonsense, and that's good for a wife too. You made a very clear statement, he chuckled. It won't be forgotten soon.